Hello and welcome. In this video, we are going to look at the difference between action and activity in Osho's works. You've heard the expression mindless activity. But what if much more of what we engage in on a daily basis is mindless activity than we think? To become aware of this is crucial if we want to live a more conscious, intentional life. Now, one of the most important things to realize during a spiritual awakening is that there are different internal states from which one can operate in the world. These states shape not only how we move through daily life, but also the results we experience. Osho draws a sharp and essential line between these two modes of living, activity and action. This distinction is a deep lens through which we can examine how we live our lives, whether we are truly present in what we do or simply sleepwalk while reacting to inner pressure, societal norms, and unconscious habit in response to whatever happens to be present in our field of experience. One state leads us into deeper awareness and authenticity, the other into repetition, restlessness, and automatic mental noise. Automatic mental noise that we often confuse for who we are and allow to feed even more unconscious activity. It is a mechanical, often compulsive state. A person caught in activity is not truly choosing, they are reacting. Activity arises from a mind that cannot be still. It is the result of inner unease, a way to escape silence or avoid facing oneself. If you want a very clear example of this, you might think of someone constantly scrolling their phone, cleaning obsessively, or filling every spare moment with tasks. On the outside, they may seem busy, engaged, even efficient. But inside, there is no clarity, only motion for the sake of motion. This kind of activity doesn't come from a place of joy or inspiration. It's simply the mind keeping itself occupied because it doesn't know what else to do. If you could look at the inner life of such a person, you would discover constant little restless, anxious impulses that manifest in the visible behaviors just mentioned. But these are the obvious and most extreme examples. And as with so many things, it's important to understand this beyond the words and apply it to your own lived reality. Observe how you throw yourself into tasks while not really thinking about what you are doing, or if you even want to do it. How you respond automatically to irritations or slights. Or perhaps how you reach for a snack without thinking about it, just because it happens to be in front of you. All of this is activity, and to Osho, this kind of living is deeply unconscious. It's what happens when a person is cut off from their own center. This is another part that is worth emphasizing. Activity comes from the conditioned automatic mind and therefore lacks any real depth. There is no observer behind the action. As already stated, there's only reaction. When one lives from this place, one cannot truly be said to live one's life. One is rather lived by life, and the automatic reactions that one's experiences give rise to. The day may be filled with movement on the outside, but in the end, nothing essential has moved inside. One has only looped through the known. Instead of acting with presence, one becomes a bundle of reactions and habitual thoughts and behaviors shaped by one's past, by fear, by conditioning. Interestingly enough, this bundle of reactions, conditioning, and habits, etc., gives off the illusion of a stable personality. Even when someone is working hard, being productive or fulfilling duties, it can still be just activity. The outer form might look meaningful, but the inner experience is empty. That's because the action didn't come from a deep yes. It came from a kind of inner noise or pressure, one that one is usually more or less unaware of. Osho compares this to a person running because they are being chased, not because they chose to run. Or, why not a treadmill? One runs simply because the treadmill is there and moves when one starts to move, even if the movement doesn't lead anywhere. Again, you are reminded to observe yourself to see how this is playing out in your own life. Since, for most of us, these cycles have been running unconsciously on autopilot for most of our lives, becoming the quote-unquote normal life experience, it can take some time to bring them into full awareness. Activity shows that a person is doing, but not being. They're not aware of the source of their actions. They don't question why they're doing what they are doing. They are just swept along by their programming and momentum. And because of this, their actions don't lead to transformation or insight. Instead, they leave a person feeling drained, anxious, and often unfulfilled. Now, Osho contrasts this with what he calls real action. And this is where the shift happens. True action, according to him, is not driven. It arises. It's not born out of compulsion, but from silence. It comes when the mind is clear, when the heart is open, and when the person is deeply present in the moment. Action is not about reacting to life, but about responding. The difference may seem subtle, but the impact is profound. In real action, in its purest form, something flows through you. It's not that you are calculating or deciding in a heavy way. Instead, you simply know what to do, and you do it with your whole being. It might be painting a picture, speaking a truth, helping someone in need, gardening, cooking, walking, or just sitting in stillness. There's no anxiety in it, no struggle, no sense of inner division. And interestingly, this kind of action often feels effortless, not because it requires no energy, but because it doesn't create resistance inside you. This type of action is not transactional. It's not done to get something. It's not about reward, recognition, or outcome. It's done because it feels true in the moment. In that sense, it's both simple and sacred. You're here now, doing exactly what it is you're doing. You do it consciously, deliberately, and you know why you are doing it, but you are not attached to the outcome of whatever it is that you are doing. Osho explains that real transformation doesn't come from fighting our habits or trying to control ourselves. It comes from awareness, from presence, from being so alert that we can watch the mind and choose not to follow its old patterns. And that's exactly what real action is, a choice made in freedom. Not because we were told to, not because we fear the consequences, but because we are present enough to act in alignment with our inner truth. This also ties into modern psychology, especially in the areas of mindfulness and somatic awareness, which are heavily influenced by Eastern spirituality. Many therapists and researchers now speak about the difference between reacting from the nervous system and responding with conscious awareness. A reaction is automatic, driven by fear or habit. A response, however, comes from a place of grounded presence. What's powerful about this perspective is that it gives us a new way to relate to ourselves. We don't have to judge our actions or force ourselves to change overnight, but we can begin to observe. We can ask, am I acting intentionally right now, or am I simply in activity? Is this coming from my silence or from my noisy conditioning? These questions aren't meant to create guilt. They're meant to bring us back home to ourselves. And there's something deeply liberating in realizing that we don't have to be constantly doing. That activity isn't the same as living. In fact, the more we drop unnecessary activity, the more space we make for real action to arise. For Osho, this is where creativity is born, not from effort or planning, but from stillness. The best art, the most beautiful gestures of kindness, the deepest insights, all come from that silent, spacious place inside. Because here is where authenticity resides. The reactive, restless mind can only produce copies of something else, even if it can repackage it in clever ways so that the copy looks novel. This also means that real action can look very quiet. It doesn't have to be dramatic or visible. It can be sitting with someone in pain without saying a word. It can be choosing not to react when someone pushes your buttons. It can be letting yourself rest, even when the world is telling you to hustle. These are all actions in the truest sense because they come from awareness, presence, and being. In summary, Osho's distinction between activity and action invites us to take a deeper look at how we move through life. Activity is not just about being busy, it's a state of unconscious, habitual doing, driven by inner restlessness or avoidance. It's reactive and disconnected from presence. In contrast, real action arises from stillness, clarity, and awareness. It's not a response to pressure or fear, but an expression of truth in the moment. It doesn't chase results. It flows naturally and effortlessly from a deeper sense of being. So when Osho invites us to move from activity to action, he is really inviting us to wake up, to stop living from the surface and start living from our core, to let go of the constant noise and discover the clarity that's already waiting beneath it. It's a shift that doesn't require changing who we are, but rather remembering what we already are, aware, present, and capable of true, authentic response. And perhaps most beautifully, when we live from this place, we not only feel more alive, we become more loving. Because action born from awareness is never harmful. It doesn't come from fear or pride or defense. It comes from connection. And in that connection, life itself becomes richer, deeper, and infinitely more real. By observing ourselves with honesty and care, we begin to see how much of our life has been shaped by activity, and we open the door to a more grounded, conscious way of living. This is not about achieving something new, but about returning to the simplicity of awareness, and from there, letting authentic action emerge. It is important to recognize that this truly is about a fundamental, real, tangible shift on the inside, which affects your whole quality of life and your interactions with the world. It is not a shift that happens all at once for most people, but once it has started, it will continue to deepen, even if the process can look very different from person to person. At the core, it is the same, but factors such as how much inner resistance we have built up, and how willing we are to relax into the process and align ourselves with it will determine its shape and how long it takes. You might not recognize whether you are in activity or action at first, especially since the unruly mind often skips between one state and the other many times throughout the day and even throughout the hour or minute. But as your journey progresses, the glimpses of a life lived in intentional action will become more and more frequent, until you come closer and closer to the tipping point where it becomes your dominant state. This can be said in many different ways that brings out slightly different facets of it. That is why, if you think these teachings are similar to others, such as David R. Hawkins' teachings about living from power or force, or Eckhart Tolle's teachings about the power of now, you would be right. This is a teaching that has been around for a long time and is now echoed among many modern spiritual teachers. We have videos on these teachings that are available on the end screen right now. You've now reached the end of the video. Remember to like and subscribe. Thank you for your time.